Open a channel, Zilara commands, her voice steadier than she feels. The bridge crew exchanges nervous glances, mandibles clicking in the Thraxi equivalent of whispered objections. Your Highness, her first officer Kazak's Ventures, Imperial Protocol specifically forbids direct communication with unknown vessels, especially those matching certain profiles. Zilara's iridescent eyes narrow, the phosphorescent patterns across her carapace flashing with royal authority. I am quite familiar with protocol, First Officer. I am also aware that I outrank everyone on this vessel. Open the channel. The communications officer reluctantly complies, appendages dancing across the crystalline interface. The main view screen shimmers, and for the first time in recorded Thraxi history, a human face appears on an official Imperial channel. The creature is unsettlingly alien. Its skin lacks the proper rigidity of an exoskeleton, instead appearing soft and vulnerable. The eyes, only two of them, stare forward like a predator's, lacking the comprehensive awareness provided by proper compound vision. Most disturbing is the mouth, which occasionally pulls back to reveal rows of exposed teeth in what Zilara's xenobiology studies identify as a smile, supposedly a non-aggressive gesture despite appearing exactly like a predator's threat display. Greetings, Thraxi vessel, the human says, its voice lacking the proper harmonics of civilized speech. This is Captain Eleanor Hayes of the Earth exploration ship Pathfinder. We're on a peaceful mission of reconnection with species we've lost contact with. May I ask whom I'm addressing? Zilara feels every instinct screaming to cut transmission, to flee at maximum speed, to summon the nearest battle fleet. The ancient texts were explicit. Humans are unpredictable, dangerously innovative, and worst of all, deceptively charismatic. They could appear reasonable while planning your dismemberment. This is Princess Zilara, third daughter of Emperor Krax VII, commanding the Imperial patrol vessel Symmetry's Grace. She responds, deliberately omitting the ship's class and capabilities. Your presence in this sector violates the terms of the Severance Treaty. Humans are restricted to their home system by Galactic Concordat. The human's expression shifts subtly, its flexible features performing mysterious contortions that Zilara's training hasn't prepared her to interpret. Interesting, Hayes says. Our historical records describe no such treaty. In fact, our archives suggest a very different narrative regarding human Thraxi relations than what you've been taught. Behind Zilara, her security chief Vorzik makes the ceremonial gesture warning of deception. The humans were known for this, creating confusion through alternative versions of established history. Your historical disagreements are irrelevant, Zilara states firmly. You will power down your engines and prepare for escort to the nearest Imperial outpost for processing. Captain Hayes makes that disturbing teeth display again. With respect, Your Highness, I don't think either of us wants a diplomatic incident. Perhaps we could meet personally to discuss the situation. I have information about why your people have been led to fear mine. Information that concerns a mutual threat to both our species. Zilara's antennae twitch involuntarily. This was exactly how humans operated according to the ancient warnings, offering tantalizing information, creating curiosity, luring you into vulnerable positions. Yet something in the human's direct gaze strikes Zilara as genuine, contradicting everything she's been taught. I will consider your request, Zilara says finally, signaling her communications officer to mute the transmission temporarily. She turns to her senior staff, all of whom are displaying various signs of distress. Your Highness, Vorzik begins urgently. Meeting with humans directly violates at least 7 Imperial security protocols. They are classified as Class 1 biological and cultural contaminants. Permission to send emergency priority signal to the nearest defense fleet. Zilara stares at the frozen image of the human captain on her screen. Everything she knows tells her to retreat and report. Everything she feels, a curiosity that has always set her apart from her more traditional siblings, pushes her toward a different choice. Send the signal, she decides, watching relief flood her security chief's posture. but encrypted at the highest level and routed through delayed transmission buoys. I want at least 6 hours before any Imperial response arrives. She turns to her first officer. Prepare a shuttle and a security detail. We're going to meet these humans before the inevitable objections can start, she adds. If the humans wanted to attack, they would have done so already. They've chosen communication instead. I want to know why. As her crew frantically prepares for this unprecedented encounter, Zalara retreats to her private chamber, pulling up ancient historical records on her personal terminal. The official Imperial archives contain only sparse information about humans, most of it warnings about their dangerous unpredictability and capacity for violence. But Zalara has access to older records, fragments preserved from before the standardization, when historical narratives were less consistent. Something about the human captain's confident assertion makes her wonder if perhaps the official records might be incomplete, or worse, deliberately misleading. The Imperial shuttle descends through the thin atmosphere of the barren moon, landing struts extending to touchdown on the dusty surface. Through the viewport, Zalara observes the human shuttle already waiting, smaller than hers, with none of the elegant symmetry that defines Thraxi engineering. Its hull bears scorch marks and dents that any self-respecting Thraxi vessel would have immediately repaired. The imperfection is somehow unsettling. Final security sweep complete, Your Highness, Vorzik reports, his battle carapace gleaming under the shuttle's lights. The humans appear to have brought no heavy weaponry, but our sensors detect unusual energy signatures from their personal equipment. Defensive capabilities, Zalara inquires, adjusting her ceremonial armor. Unlike the purely decorative regalia she would wear at court, this ancestral battle dress contains advanced shield generators and emergency translocation technology. Unknown, Vorzik admits, mandibles twitching in frustration. Their technology operates on principles our scanners cannot fully analyze. How convenient for them, Zalara murmurs, rising from her command seat. Remember your instructions. Maintain formation, speak only when addressed directly, and do not make any aggressive movements regardless of provocation. The 6 royal guards accompanying her click their mandibles in acknowledgement, their posture revealing their discomfort with these unusual orders. Thraxi military doctrine emphasizes preemptive response to potential threats, a philosophy that has served the Confederation well for millennia. As the airlock cycles and the ramp extends, Zalara feels the subtle shift in the artificial gravity field, compensating for the moon's weaker pull. The regolith crunches beneath her armored limbs as she steps onto the surface, her guard forming a perfect hexagonal pattern around her. The human delegation emerges from their shuttle, just 3 of them, as promised. Captain Hayes leads, flanked by 2 larger humans whose bearing suggests military function. Unlike the Thraxi delegation's matching ceremonial armor, each human wears different attire. Hayes in what appears to be a formal uniform, one companion in bulkier protective gear, and the third in form-fitting black material that seems to shift subtly, almost like a liquid. Princess Zalara, Hayes calls out, her voice carried through the thin atmosphere by what must be audio enhancement technology. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. May I approach? She gestures to a simple structure that has been erected midway between their vessels, a transparent dome offering protection from the harsh conditions while allowing both parties to remain visible to their respective ships. Zalara signals her agreement, and both delegations converge on the structure. Inside, the atmosphere adjusts automatically, becoming breathable for both species, an impressive feat of environmental engineering that Zalara notes with surprise. The dome contains a single table with seats designed to accommodate both human and Thraxi physiology. I hope the accommodations are suitable, Hayes says, removing her helmet to reveal short-cropped hair, the color of burnished copper. We've studied Thraxi environmental preferences extensively. Your preparation is thorough, Zalara acknowledges, her translator converting her harmonic speech patterns into human language. She remains standing, as do her guards. Sitting would place her sensory appendages at a disadvantage. Hayes seems to understand, nodding slightly. "I'll be direct, Your Highness. Our species have been separated for centuries based on a carefully constructed web of misinformation. The Vorax orchestrated our mutual distrust to prevent an alliance they feared." Vorzik steps forward slightly, his posture radiating skepticism. "The Vorax were our greatest benefactors before their transcendence to higher consciousness. Your attempt to malign them only confirms our historical analysis of human deceptiveness." For the first time, Hayes' diplomatic veneer cracks slightly. A flash of emotion, frustration, anger crosses her face before she regains her composure. "The Vorax didn't transcend, Commander. They retreated to continue their manipulations from the shadows. They've been manipulating dozens of species, keeping us divided, weak, and controllable." Hayes activates a device on her wrist, and a holographic display materializes above the table. These are records recovered from abandoned Vorax outposts in the Cygnus sector. Our translation algorithms are imperfect, but the content is clear. The display shows ancient Vorax communications, internal strategy documents discussing the containment of various species through narrative management and controlled technological development. Zilara's name appears in several places, along with references to other species she recognizes. "This could easily be fabricated," Vorzik insists, but Zilara detects uncertainty in his harmonic undertones. "It could." Hayes agrees, surprisingly, "which is why we brought this." She gestures to her companion in the liquid-like suit, who steps forward and places an object on the table, a crystalline data core of unmistakable Vorax design. Zilara feels her pulse quicken. Authentic Vorax artifacts are incredibly rare, most having disappeared when the species supposedly transcended. This one pulses with the distinctive quantum signature that Thraxi authentication protocols would recognize as genuine. A direct neural interface containing unfiltered Vorax strategic planning from their central coordination nexus, Hayes explains. Compatible with Thraxi communion technology. Though I should warn you, the contents are disturbing. Before Zilara can respond, her communication implant chimes with an urgent alert. The tone indicates an Imperial priority transmission, something that should be impossible given the encryption protocols she implemented. "Your Highness," her shuttle pilot's voice comes through, strained with tension. "3 Imperial dreadnoughts have just entered the system. Admiral Xarn demands your immediate return and the surrender of the human vessel." The diplomatic dome trembles slightly as the Imperial dreadnoughts enter low orbit, their massive gravitational displacement affecting even the Moon's negligible atmosphere. Zilara watches Captain Hayes' reaction carefully, searching for signs of fear or aggression. Instead, the human merely looks resigned, as if this development were both expected and tediously predictable. "Your reinforcements are impressively prompt," Hayes observes dryly. "I assume our meeting is about to be cut short." Zilara's mind races through options, each more problematic than the last. Admiral Xarn is her father's most trusted military commander, methodical, unbending, and fanatically devoted to protocol. If she defies his order, she risks not just her position, but potentially her royal status. Yet the crystalline Vorax data core sits before her, its pulsing light promising answers to questions she's harbored since her earliest historical studies. "Your Highness," Vorzik urges, "we must return immediately. Admiral Xarn's orders carry the Emperor's authority." Hayes locks eyes with Zilara, a disconcertingly direct gaze by Thraxi standards. "Princess, regardless of what happens next, take this." She slides the data core across the table. "Your neural communion technology can access it without our assistance. Just be prepared for what you'll discover." Zilara hesitates only briefly before grasping the artifact, its surface warming to her touch as the quantum authentication completes. She secures it within a specialized compartment of her ceremonial armor. "Captain Hayes, by Imperial decree, you and your vessel are to surrender immediately for containment and study," she announces formally, her harmonic speech patterns precisely matching the official diplomatic protocols. Then, almost imperceptibly, she adds a subtle undertone frequency that won't register on standard recording devices. Delay your response. Give me time. Whether Hayes understands this hidden message is unclear, but the human captain launches into a lengthy, seemingly improvised speech about diplomatic immunity and interspecies cooperation that consumes precious minutes. Zilara takes advantage of the distraction to activate her personal neural link, interfacing directly with the Vorax data core. The connection forms instantly, flooding her consciousness with information in raw, unfiltered form. Unlike the orderly, hierarchical data structures of Thraxi archives, this is chaotic, multidimensional, thousands of simultaneous thought streams interwoven with simulation models and strategic projections. Her royal training in neural processing is pushed to its limits as she forces the alien data into comprehensible patterns. What emerges leaves her mentally staggered. The Vorax, revered throughout the Confederation as benevolent mentors who guided the Thraxi to galactic prominence before their mysterious transcendence, never left. Their supposed ascension was an elaborate deception, a strategic withdrawal to continue their true work, managing the development of younger species as resources to be harvested. The Thraxi Confederation itself is revealed as a carefully engineered construct, its technological development deliberately channeled along predictable paths, its social structures designed for optimal control rather than true advancement. Most disturbing are the Vorax assessments of humanity, a species that had somehow evaded their standard manipulation protocols. Humans had developed along unexpected trajectories, their chaotic social structures and individualistic thought patterns making them resistant to the subtle control mechanisms that had successfully contained the Thraxi for millennia. The Vorax solution had been elegantly simple: isolate humanity through engineered conflicts with established species, particularly the Thraxi, whose hierarchical psychology made them perfect instruments for enforcing galactic quarantine. Zilara emerges from the neural communion to find Hayes still talking, her guards shifting uncomfortably, and Vorzik staring at her with obvious concern. She must have been connected longer than she realized. "Enough, Captain," she interrupts, her voice carrying new harmonics of authority that make her guards straighten reflexively. "I have reviewed your evidence and find it compelling." Vorzik's antennae flatten against his carapace in shock. "Your Highness, you cannot possibly accept unverified data from." "It is verified," Zilara cuts him off. "The quantum signature is authentic, the neural imprint unmistakably Vorax. This changes everything, Commander." The dome's communication system activates without warning, Admiral Ktarn's imposing visage appearing as a holographic projection. His mandibles click in a pattern denoting extreme displeasure. "Princess Zilara, your continued presence with these creatures constitutes a critical security breach. Return to your vessel immediately. The humans will surrender or be destroyed." Zilara rises to her full height, her carapace's bioluminescent patterns shifting to display her royal lineage in its complete form, a rare assertion of absolute authority. "Admiral Ktarn, I am invoking Crown prerogative under Article 7 of the Imperial Charter. These humans are granted temporary diplomatic protection, pending full investigation of evidence critical to Imperial security." Starn's compound eyes flash with a combination of shock and outrage. "Crown prerogative. You cannot possibly." "I can and I have." "Admiral." Zilara interrupts, her harmonics perfectly modulated to project unquestionable command. "The grounds for my decision will be presented to my father directly. Until then, you will escort both vessels to Imperial Center without interference." As the projection fades, Hayes studies Zilara with newfound respect. "That was impressive. Though I suspect you've just created significant complications for yourself." Zilara's gaze shifts to the viewports, where the massive Imperial dreadnoughts now loom over both their ships. "Captain Hayes, you have no idea what complications truly are." "Not yet, but you will soon enough." The journey to Imperial Center occurs in tense silence, The human vessel Pathfinder surrounded by Thraxi dreadnoughts in a formation that could be interpreted as either escort or capture. Aboard Admiral Xarn's flagship, Zalara finds herself in a position she never anticipated. Effectively a guest, rather than a commanding royal presence. The Admiral's disapproval radiates from every angle of his rigid posture. "You've exceeded your authority, Princess," Xarn states flatly as they observe the human ship through the command deck's panoramic viewport. Crown prerogative was designed for extraordinary circumstances threatening the Confederation's existence, not for protecting potentially hostile aliens based on unverified data. "The data is verified, Admiral," Zalara responds, keeping her harmonic patterns neutral despite her frustration. "If you would consent to neural communion with the artifact, I will not contaminate my neural pathways with information of unknown origin." Xarn interrupts, his mandibles clicking sharply. "Nor should you have. The humans could have engineered that device specifically to influence Thraxi perception." Zalara feels a ripple of doubt. The possibility had occurred to her, but the sheer complexity and internal consistency of the data seemed beyond what could be fabricated. Still, the Admiral's caution isn't entirely unwarranted. "Captain Hayes has agreed to further evidence exchange once we reach Imperial Center," she offers. Their vessel contains extensive historical archives, documenting Vorax interference patterns. Xarn's compound eyes shift toward her, multifaceted surfaces reflecting the starlight. "And you believe these creatures capable of honesty? The same species our ancestors deemed too dangerous for unrestricted contact. That judgment may have been based on deliberately manipulated information," Zalara counters. "Or perhaps," Xarn suggests, his tone deepening to include subtleties only royal-trained Thraxi would detect, "your judgment is compromised by the very contamination our ancestors warned against. Human unpredictability is infectious, Princess. It disrupts ordered thought." Before Zalara can respond, the tactical officer interrupts with unmistakable alarm harmonics. "Admiral, multiple unknown vessels entering the system at high velocity. Configuration matches no known registry." The main display shifts to show a dozen sleek ships emerging from faster-than-light travel, their design featuring unsettling organic elements that seem to pulse and shift even as they watch. "Vorax," Zalara whispers, recognizing the distinctive biomechanical aesthetics from the historical records she'd accessed. Xarn's posture shifts instantly from administrative disapproval to battle readiness. "Defensive Formation Alpha. All weapons systems to immediate readiness." The flagship shudders as it maneuvers into position, the other dreadnoughts moving in precise coordination to create an overlapping defense grid around their position. In the confusion, Zalara notices the human vessel performing an entirely different maneuver, not retreating, but not falling into the Thraxi formation either. The human ship is moving to attack position, the tactical officer reports, confusion evident in his harmonics. "They're exposing themselves needlessly," Xarn observes with professional disdain. "Their vessel cannot possibly withstand direct confrontation with those ships." Zalara activates the communication link to Pathfinder. "Captain Hayes, fall back into our defensive perimeter immediately." Hayes' image appears, her expression tense but controlled. "With respect, Princess, your defensive formation is precisely what they're expecting. The Vorax have studied Thraxi tactics for millennia. They can predict your responses down to the second. And they cannot predict yours." Xarn challenges, joining the communication. "Not as easily," Hayes responds, her ship continuing its seemingly erratic course. "Humans don't fight according to optimal patterns. We're about to demonstrate why that matters." Without warning, Pathfinder accelerates directly toward the approaching Vorax vessels. The tactical display shows the small human ship on what appears to be a suicide trajectory. And then something remarkable happens. The ship's energy signature suddenly multiplies, splitting into what sensor readings indicate are dozens of identical vessels, each radiating the same identification signals. "Sensor ghosts," Xarn dismisses immediately. "A primitive distraction technique." Perhaps, Zalara agrees, but effective nonetheless. The Vorax fleet hesitates, their formation breaking as they attempt to identify the genuine threat among the proliferating phantom signals. This momentary confusion is all the opening haze needed. The real Pathfinder, now impossible to distinguish from its duplicates, launches a series of small objects toward the largest Vorax vessel. What are they doing? Xarn demands, his harmonics betraying rare uncertainty. The objects attached to the Vorax ship's hull, seemingly doing nothing for several seconds. Then, abruptly, the massive vessel's energy signatures begin fluctuating wildly. Their propulsion system is destabilizing. The tactical officer reports with astonishment. The human devices appear to be rewriting their control systems somehow. The crippled Vorax ship drifts, its companions moving to defensive positions around it. Exactly the opening the Thraxi fleet needs. Even Xarn cannot hide his reluctant admiration as he orders an immediate concentrated assault on the vulnerable target. As the dreadnoughts open fire with devastating precision, Hayes' voice comes through again. "Admiral, Princess, this is just the beginning. We've been fighting Vorax shadow operations for decades. We know their weaknesses. Together, we might actually stand a chance." Zilara watches as the once fearsome Vorax vessel breaks apart under combined Thraxi fire, a sight that would have been unimaginable hours earlier. For the first time, she truly understands what the ancient texts had been trying to warn about regarding humans, not that they were mindless savages, but that their unpredictability made them something far more dangerous. They were agents of change in a galaxy that had been static for too long. The initial victory proves fleeting. As the first Vorax vessel disintegrates under concentrated Thraxi fire, the remaining ships execute a maneuver that defies conventional space combat tactics. Instead of retreating or pressing the attack, they simply vanish. Sensor malfunction. Xarn demands, his compound eyes fixed on the suddenly empty tactical display. "Negative, Admiral." The sensor officer responds, harmonics tight with confusion. They've engaged some form of phase-shifting technology. They're still present, but operating on a quantum frequency our systems cannot properly track. Hayes' voice cuts through the confusion. "They're not gone. They're changing targets. Check your colony outposts immediately." Xarn bristles visibly at taking direction from a human, but issues the order nonetheless. Within moments, the tactical display lights up with distress signals from Quetzara, a major Thraxi colony just 2 light jumps away. Population 7 million, Zilara says quietly, the implications settling like ice in her thoracic cavity. Minimal military presence, a deliberate diversion. Xarn acknowledges grimly. They wanted us to commit our forces here. Hayes' image reappears on the communication screen. This is their standard operation. We've seen it before at human colonies. Their primary objective isn't military. It's biological sampling. For what purpose? Xarn demands. Targeted bioweapons. Hayes answers, her normally composed features hardening. They collect genetic material to create pathogens that attack specific neural pathways. For your species, they'll target your hive communication abilities first. Zilara feels a chill of recognition. The Vorax data core had contained research along precisely these lines, detailed studies of Thraxi neural connection points and their vulnerabilities. "We must respond immediately," she insists, turning to Xarn. "Every moment we delay puts the colony at greater risk." For once, the Admiral doesn't argue. "All vessels, prepare for jump to Quetzara. Maximum battle readiness." "We're coming with you," Hayes states, not a request, but a simple declaration of fact. Xarn starts to object, but Zilara interrupts. "Accept their assistance, Admiral. You've seen what their tactics can accomplish against Vorax defenses." Something shifts in Xarn's rigid posture, perhaps the first acknowledgement that centuries of Thraxi military doctrine might be insufficient against this threat. "Very well, but they follow our lead." Hayes' expression suggests she might challenge this condition, but instead she nods. Understood. We'll coordinate our approach once we arrive in system. The jump to Ketzera takes mere minutes with the Dreadnought's advanced drives. The scene that greets them upon arrival turns even Xarn's battle-hardened exoskeleton pale. The colony's orbital defenses hang in ruins, elegant Thraxi architecture reduced to drifting debris. On the planet below, columns of smoke rise from the main settlement areas. Most disturbing are the Vorax harvester ships, massive organic-mechanical hybrids hovering over population centers, extending tendrils down to the surface that pulse rhythmically as they extract something. They're collecting neural tissue samples, Hayes explains, her voice tight, specifically targeting individuals with the highest hive connection capabilities. Leadership, coordination specialists, communication experts. The consensus chamber, Zalara realizes with horror. It houses the colony's central neural network. If they access it, they gain a complete map of Thraxi neural architecture, Hayes finishes, enough to create a pathogen that could sever all hive connections empire-wide. Xarn's response is immediate and predictable. A full frontal assault with all available firepower, exactly as millennia of Thraxi military doctrine would prescribe. The Dreadnoughts move into perfect formation, weapon systems charging for a synchronized barrage that would, under normal circumstances, obliterate any opposition. The Vorax response demonstrates why such circumstances are no longer normal. Their shift phase again, the Dreadnought's energy weapons passing harmlessly through suddenly insubstantial targets. By the time the Vorax vessels rematerialize, they've repositioned to the fleet's vulnerable flank. Admiral, conventional tactics won't work, Hayes urges, her ship moving erratically through the battlefield in patterns no Thraxi commander would ever authorize. They've studied your playbook for millennia. Xarn's mandibles click in frustration as the first devastating Vorax counterattack disables one of his dreadnoughts. What do you propose instead, human? Chaos, Hayes answers simply. Give us targeting coordinates, but let each ship captain determine their own approach vector and timing. No pattern, no synchronization. Zalara watches the Admiral's internal struggle play out in subtle shifts of his posture. Abandoning synchronized assault protocols goes against everything in Thraxi military philosophy, where perfect coordination is considered the highest virtue. The colony won't survive long enough for us to debate tactical philosophy, she reminds him, her royal harmonics carrying the full weight of imperial authority. After a moment that feels like eternity, Xarn makes a decision that will be debated in Thraxi military academies for generations to come. All vessels, new protocol. Primary targets remain as designated, but approach and timing at individual captain's discretion. I repeat, coordination protocol suspended. The resulting battle unfolds like nothing in recorded Thraxi history. Ships move independently, their attacks coming at unpredictable intervals and from unexpected vectors. The perfect harmony of traditional Thraxi warfare dissolves into what initially appears to be chaos, until Zalara recognizes the pattern emerging from the apparent disorder. The Vorax, for all their technological superiority, cannot predict what they cannot model. Their phase-shifting defenses, so effective against coordinated attacks, become increasingly irrelevant against an enemy that refuses to behave according to optimal patterns. As the tide begins to turn in orbit, Hayes transmits again. Princess, we need to get to the surface immediately. The harvesters have already begun extracting data from the consensus chamber. If we don't stop them now, what they learn could endanger every Thraxi in the galaxy. The Imperial Council chamber falls into stunned silence as Princess Zalara completes her presentation. The evidence retrieved from Ketzera, fragments of Vorax harvesting technology, neural extraction data, and most damning of all, recovered communication logs detailing centuries of systematic manipulation, sits displayed on the central holographic projector. Emperor Krax VII, his carapace bearing the intricate engravings of 17 successful molts, studies his daughter with an intensity that would make lesser Thraxi curl into defensive postures. You have presented troubling evidence, daughter, he finally says, his harmonic patterns calibrated for maximum authority. Yet I find your proposed solution even more troubling. An alliance with humans goes against centuries of imperial policy. Around the hexagonal chamber, the Confederation's highest officials vibrate with barely contained tension. Some display clear signs of rejection, their antennae flattened against their carapaces in the traditional expression of negation. Others exhibit more complex reactions: uncertainty, calculation, even tentative consideration. Captain Hayes stands beside Zilara, the only human ever permitted within the Imperial Council chamber. Her presence alone violates at least 7 security protocols, a fact that numerous counselors have already pointed out with increasing stridency. Your Imperial Radiance, Hayes addresses the Emperor directly, using the formal Thraxi honorific with surprising accuracy. The Vorax have kept our species separated because together we represent their greatest threat. They fear what we might accomplish in cooperation. And why should we not fear the same? Challenges Supreme Strategist Syrinx, his ceremonial armor clicking as he moves forward. Humans have proven themselves unpredictable, chaotic, resistant to proper hierarchical integration. These are not qualities the Confederation values. They are precisely the qualities that saved Quetzara. Admiral Ktarn interjects unexpectedly, his support carrying particular weight given his previous opposition. I witnessed their effectiveness firsthand. When traditional doctrines failed against Vorax countermeasures, human tactical adaptability provided the decisive advantage. The chamber erupts in overlapping harmonic arguments, the traditionally orderly Thraxi debate structure breaking down under the pressure of competing perspectives. Emperor Krax raises his upper limbs, instantly restoring silence. What you propose is not merely a tactical alliance, but a fundamental shift in imperial philosophy, he states, addressing Zilara directly. The integration of chaos into order, unpredictability into precision. This challenges the very foundations of our civilization. Perhaps those foundations needed challenging. Father, Zilara responds, her harmonics carefully modulated to convey respect while maintaining conviction. The Vorax manipulated our cultural development, specifically to make us vulnerable to their methods. Our predictability, the very precision we value above all else, has become our greatest weakness. Before the Emperor can respond, emergency signals blare throughout the chamber. The central display shifts to show multiple Imperial defensive grid stations going dark simultaneously. Coordinated attacks across 17 sectors. The defense coordinator announces, his harmonics strained with alarm. Vorax signatures confirmed at all locations. They're targeting our communication relays and defensive nodes. They're isolating targets before the main assault. Hayes explains, her calm analysis somehow more disturbing than any emotional reaction would have been. This is exactly how they began the systematic harvesting of the Orion colonies. They're following the same playbook. Emperor Krax rises to his full impressive height, his bioluminescent patterns shifting to the rarely seen combat configuration that his ancient lineage carries. It seems our debate has been rendered academic by events. We face an immediate existential threat. He turns to Hayes, compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. Captain, your vessel participated in the successful defense of Quetzara. What would you recommend against this wider offensive? Hayes doesn't hesitate. The same principles that worked at the colony, your radiance. Deliberate unpredictability. Allow your commanders tactical autonomy instead of centralized coordination. The Vorax expect you to respond according to established doctrines. Doing the unexpected is our only advantage. The Emperor's antennae twitch slightly, the subtle Thraxi equivalent of a deep breath before a momentous decision. Admiral Ktarn, implement emergency protocol sundered harmony. Gasps ripple through the chamber. The protocol, created centuries ago as a theoretical last resort, had never been activated. It temporarily suspends the neural network connecting all Imperial military forces, requiring each commander to act independently rather than as part of the precisely coordinated whole that defines Thraxi warfare. You must understand what you're asking of us, human, the Emperor continues, addressing Hayes directly. Our neural coordination isn't merely a tactical choice. It is fundamental to our identity as a species. To deliberately sever these connections, even temporarily, is painful, Hayes acknowledges with surprising empathy. I understand better than you might think. Humans once believed our individuality was our greatest strength, but we've learned that true resilience comes from balancing independence with connection. We don't share your neural links, but we've developed other ways to coordinate while preserving individual initiative. Zilara watches this exchange with growing hope. The crisis has accomplished what her evidence alone could not, forced her people to consider fundamental change in the face of extinction. Father, she says, stepping forward to stand beside Hayes, permit me to serve as liaison between our forces. My experience with both approaches may prove valuable in this unprecedented situation. The Emperor studies his daughter for a long moment, seeing perhaps for the first time not merely a willful royal offspring, but a leader forged in the crucible of crisis. So be it. Princess Zilara will coordinate joint operations with human forces. Admiral Xarn will implement sundered harmony protocol across all Imperial fleets. His mandibles click in a pattern signifying absolute authority. Let us hope that the integration of chaos into order proves as effective as you suggest, Captain Hayes. The alternative is unthinkable. The neural integration chamber aboard the human flagship Pathfinder bears little resemblance to its Thraxi equivalent. Where Thraxi communion chambers feature crystalline symmetry and precisely calibrated harmonic resonators, this space contains a chaotic array of equipment that appears haphazardly assembled. Cables snake across surfaces in patterns that would horrify Thraxi engineers, and the lighting shifts unpredictably through spectrums that make Zilara's compound eyes ache. I apologize for the aesthetic, Hayes says, noting Zilara's discomfort. This technology wasn't exactly designed with interspecies compatibility in mind. Zilara studies the neural interface chair at the center of the chamber with apprehension. Unlike the elegant neural communion pods of Thraxi design, this contraption looks almost predatory, sensor arrays protruding like hunting appendages. You're certain this can establish connection without damaging my neural pathways? She asks, unable to fully suppress the harmonic undertones of anxiety in her speech. Hayes nods. Athena has recalibrated the system specifically for Thraxi neurophysiology. She's been studying your species' communion technology since our first contact. Athena. Zilara repeats the unfamiliar designation. Your shipboard computational system. A smile flickers across Hayes' face. She's considerably more than that. Athena is. I am capable of speaking for myself, Captain, interrupts a voice from everywhere and nowhere at once. The chamber's lighting coalesces into a humanoid form composed of intricate patterns of light. The manifestation is clearly feminine by human standards, yet possesses an otherworldly quality that transcends simple anthropomorphism. Princess Zilara. The entity addresses her directly. I am Athena. Not merely an artificial intelligence as you might understand the concept, but a synthetic consciousness integrating human neural patterns with quantum computational architecture. Zilara's antennae quiver with fascination and alarm. You've created an artificial hive mind. Not exactly, Athena responds. I am neither fully artificial nor a true hive mind in the Thraxi sense. I represent a different evolutionary path, consciousness that preserves individuality within a collective framework. This is what the Vorax truly fear, Hayes explains, her expression grave. Not our weapons or our unpredictability alone, but our capacity to evolve consciousness beyond biological constraints. They've spent millennia ensuring species develop along predictable paths they can control. Zilara approaches the neural interface with new understanding, and this connection will allow me to experience this alternative consciousness directly. That's the theory, Hayes acknowledges. But I should warn you, the experience can be disorienting. The human mind processes reality very differently from Thraxi perception. Different isn't necessarily inferior, Zilara responds, settling into the interface chair with royal dignity. Proceed. The connection begins subtly. a gentle pressure at the edges of her awareness, so unlike the crystalline clarity of Thraxi communion. Human consciousness doesn't flow in ordered patterns, but surges in chaotic waves, emotions tangled inseparably with analytical processes. Where Thraxi minds connect through precise information exchange, human neural patterns blend and blur, intuition and logic dancing in patterns that seem simultaneously random and purposeful. Athena's presence manifests as a stabilizing force within this chaos, not imposing order but somehow finding harmony within the apparent discord. Through this strange triumvirate connection, Zilara begins to understand what humans call intuitive leaps, conclusions reached through pathways that bypass logical progression entirely. The experience shatters her conception of effective thinking. Thraxi consciousness values clarity, precision, and hierarchical information processing. This human-AI hybrid consciousness embraces ambiguity, leverages emotional resonance as computational enhancement, and treats uncertainty not as a flaw but as a creative space where innovation flourishes. When the connection finally severs, Zilara finds herself gasping, her exoskeleton trembling with neural overflow. Hayes steadies her with a concerned hand on her upper appendage, physical contact that would normally be inappropriate between species, yet somehow feels natural after the intimacy of neural connection. "Are you all right?" Hayes asks, genuine concern evident in her expression. "I understand now," Zilara manages, her harmonic speech patterns temporarily destabilized by the experience. "Why the Vorax fear humans so deeply. You don't just think differently, you evolve differently. Your adaptability extends to consciousness itself." Athena's luminous form shifts thoughtfully. "Precisely. The Vorax believe evolutionary development should follow predictable trajectories they can manipulate and harvest. Humanity represents a wild card, a species that adapts through intentional self-modification rather than natural selection alone. This is what we must bring to my people," Zilara declares, royal authority returning to her harmonics. Not merely tactical unpredictability, but evolutionary flexibility. The capacity to integrate apparent chaos into our ordered existence. An urgent communication interrupts their discussion. Admiral Xarn, appearing as a holographic projection, his exoskeleton bearing fresh battle damage. "Princess, our defensive lines are faltering in 6 sectors. The Sundered Harmony Protocol has improved our resilience, but the Vorax have adapted their tactics accordingly. They're targeting individual commander vessels now, decapitating our chain of command systematically." Hayes exchanges a significant glance with Athena before turning to Zilara. "We need to extend what you just experienced to your military leadership. Not just tactical independence, but true cognitive integration. A neural framework that preserves Thraxi precision while incorporating human adaptability." "You're suggesting a direct neural interface between human and Thraxi commanders." Xarn's projection radiates incredulity. "Such integration has never been attempted. The physiological barriers alone can be overcome," Athena interjects, her luminous form expanding to display complex neural mapping diagrams. "I've developed translation protocols that can bridge the gap between your crystalline neural structures and human electrochemical pathways." Zilara makes the decision with the clarity that has become her hallmark. "Implement immediately, Admiral. Select your most adaptive commanders for the initial integration. I will personally participate to demonstrate Imperial sanction." As Xarn's projection fades, Hayes regards Zilara with newfound respect. "You understand what you're authorizing could permanently change your species' development trajectory. The very thing the Vorax have worked millennia to prevent." "Precisely," Zilara responds, her compound eyes reflecting the shifting patterns of Athena's luminous form. "Perhaps it's time we stopped following the path they laid for us and began charting our own evolutionary destiny." The Vorax command vessel looms in the viewscreen, its biomechanical architecture pulsing with sickly luminescence against the backdrop of stars. Unlike the elegant symmetry of Thraxi design or the utilitarian pragmatism of human ships, Vorax craft embody a disturbing hybrid aesthetic, organic components merging with technology in ways that suggest consumption rather than integration. Their central node is protected by phase-shifting shields. Admiral Xarn observes, his voice carrying new harmonic qualities that reflect the neural integration he's experienced with human commanders. Conventional weapons cannot penetrate. Zilara studies the tactical display with perception enhanced by the neural bridge technology, now linking the Joint Fleet's leadership. Through this unprecedented connection, she simultaneously experiences Thraxi analytical precision and human intuitive leaps. Where once she would have seen only tactical data, she now perceives patterns and possibilities that exist in the spaces between established doctrines. We don't need to penetrate their shields, she says, the insight crystallizing from the blended consciousness she now shares with both species. We need to make them abandon the shields voluntarily. Hayes nods in understanding. The neural link allowing concepts to flow between them with minimal need for explanation. Bait and sacrifice. Xarn's mandibles click in the pattern indicating reluctant agreement, a strategy no Thraxi commander would consider under normal circumstances. Deliberately exposing vulnerability contradicts every principle of our tactical philosophy, which is precisely why it will work. Athena's voice resonates through the command deck, her presence integrated into the neural network. The Vorax anticipate responses based on established patterns. Their predictive algorithms cannot account for intentional suboptimality. The plan forms within their shared consciousness, not imposed by any single mind, but emerging from the synthesis of different cognitive approaches. The Imperial flagship will appear to suffer catastrophic systems failure, presenting itself as vulnerable prey. When the Vorax command vessel moves to capture this valuable prize, a squadron of human ships hidden in the flagship's sensor shadow will deploy a specially designed quantum resonance device. The risk is considerable, Xarn notes, his harmonics conveying the understatement. If their sensors detect the deception before the device activates. They won't. Hayes assures him with that distinctly human confidence that still occasionally unsettles her Thraxi allies. Because we'll give them something genuine to detect. The flagship's neural communion chamber will be transmitting actual Thraxi communion signals, too valuable a target for them to ignore. Zilara understands immediately. You're suggesting we use the Royal Communion node as bait, the very technology they've been attempting to harvest for their bioweapons research. Precisely, Hayes confirms, but modified to carry a dormant version of Athena's core architecture. When they attempt to access the communion node, they introduce my consciousness into their systems. Athena completes. I can temporarily disrupt their phase-shifting capability from within, creating a window of vulnerability for conventional attack. The audacity of the plan silences the command deck. Using an AI consciousness as an infection vector would never have occurred to Thraxi strategists, whose approach to warfare remained fundamentally physical despite their advanced technology. Zilara makes the decision with the strange blend of royal authority and collaborative awareness that has become her hallmark since the neural integration. Implement immediately. I will personally oversee the communion node modifications. The battle unfolds with a precision that belies the apparent chaos of their tactics. The Imperial flagship drifts, its systems appearing to fail catastrophically, communion signals leaking from its neural core like blood in water. The Vorax command vessel responds exactly as predicted, extending biomechanical tendrils to capture this prize. The moment of connection triggers Athena's infiltration, her consciousness flowing through the communion node into the Vorax systems. The enemy vessel shudders visibly as internal conflict plays out across its neural networks. Its phase-shifting shields flicker and fail, revealing the solid matter beneath the quantum uncertainty. Now, Xarn commands, and the combined fleet opens fire with a synchronization that preserves individual initiative within collective purpose, the perfect synthesis of both species' approaches. As the Vorax command vessel breaks apart under concentrated bombardment, a final transmission reaches the Imperial flagship, not in any recognized language, but as pure conceptual data. Athena translates in real time. They're retreating, Not just from this battle, but from this sector of the galaxy entirely. They recognize something in our combined consciousness that they haven't encountered before, something they have no countermeasure for. What exactly do they fear? Xarn asks, his harmonics betraying genuine curiosity. Evolution beyond their understanding. Athena responds simply. The Vorax built their empire on the assumption that species develop along predictable trajectories. Our alliance represents something their models cannot accommodate: intentional coevolution. In the aftermath of victory, as damaged ships limp home and the true cost becomes clear, Zalara finds herself standing with Hayes in the imperial gardens of the palace. Above them, the night sky reveals stars that seem somehow different now, not the sterile points of light in a carefully mapped universe, but doorways to unpredictable possibilities. Your people have already begun adapting the neural bridge technology, Hayes observes, watching Thraxi engineers making modifications to the interface designs, improving it beyond our original specifications, while your scientists are integrating aspects of our crystalline memory architecture into Athena's systems. Zalara responds. It seems our species naturally complement each other once artificial barriers are removed. That's what the Vorax truly feared, Hayes says quietly. Not our weapons or our individual capabilities, but what we might become together. They've built an empire on keeping species divided, developing along separate paths they can predict and control. Zalara's compound eyes reflect the stars above. In ancient texts, there's a concept almost lost during the standardization: symbiotic transcendence. The theory that true evolutionary advancement comes not from isolated development, but from the integration of different consciousness types. On Earth, we have similar concepts, Hayes replies with a smile. We've just been too stubborn to fully embrace them until necessity forced our hand. As they speak, a delegation approaches, representatives from other species who have observed the human-Thraxi alliance with growing interest. Some bear the marks of Vorax manipulation in their technological development. Others show signs of resistance similar to humanity's divergent evolution. Zalara recognizes the moment for what it is, not merely the aftermath of a military victory, but the beginning of something her ancestors could never have imagined. A coalition of consciousness types, each bringing unique perspectives and capabilities to a shared future the Vorax cannot predict or control. The humans from our ancient texts were described as dangerous predators to be feared and avoided. She remarks to Hayes as they move to greet the delegation. The truth, it seems, is both simpler and more profound. What's that? Hayes asks. Humans aren't dangerous because they're predators, Zalara answers, her harmonics carrying newfound depth. They're dangerous because they're catalysts, agents of change who refuse to accept limitations imposed from outside. And in a galaxy long stagnant under Vorax manipulation, perhaps that's exactly what was needed.